With Mikael, Granlund, and Mackenzie, Blackwood off to greener and burgundier pastures, we look at who's left for Mike Grier to try to trade.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker at the Reef, also the co-host of Locked On NHL. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Probably part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. And if you want to be an everydayer, all you have to do is just follow wherever you get podcasts, or you can watch this on YouTube as well. And today we're going to be looking at the Sharks roster to try to figure out who Mike Grier still has left to potentially trade. So we'll start by looking at the forwards, look at kind of who's left there, look at the defensemen. There's one big name still potentially left, and look at some of the aging prospects who Mike Grier might try to use as a little bit of a kind of grease the wheels there in case to try to get something, a bigger move done. So let's start with the forward group. And we've already seen Mikael Granlund, who was arguably the biggest piece that the Sharks had left, right, as an expiring contract with $5 million. We know him and Cody Ceci were paired together for a first-round pick and a conditional fourth-round pick that could become a third-round pick if the Dallas Stars make the Stanley Cup. We know that happened, right? We're really excited about our first-round pick. It's very much burning a hole in our pocket of what can we go do with that, whether it's who do we draft, or what I feel is more likely is who do we trade it to try to do something else? Because I feel like, one, this draft is not super great. And two, I do think Mike Grier is going to be aggressive this offseason to try to add NHL caliber pieces that can help out now and in the future. So let's look at what the Sharks have kind of left on the forward group. And there's really nothing here that screams like big return, right? Mikael Granlund was definitely your best piece. But nothing else, I think, among the forward group where you feel like I'm going to get something substantial here, something I can, be really, really excited about. So going down the list from for the Sharks is contract wise, because I think that's usually the easiest way to go for it. And that's kind of just how Puckpedia does it. So for the Sharks, of course, you have Logan Couture, who hasn't played a game this season and most likely isn't going to play another game. We'll see. He's not going anywhere, right? Tyler Toffoli, of course, making $6 million. Signed a contract this offseason. Full no move clause. We've talked about before. He doesn't want to be traded. He spent the last couple seasons bouncing around, getting traded mid-season multiple times. Like, the dude just wants to settle down for like 20 minutes. Toffoli is here for the next few seasons, unless he goes to Mike Grier and says, "I want out, bro." Toffoli's going to be here, so we can just stop trying to trade Tyler Toffoli. Not that you want to. Tyler Toffoli's been awesome. He's been the best signing the Sharks made this offseason. So Alex Wennberg, I know he's been hurt recently, but expected to be back after the Four Nations break. Signed a 2-year deal with a full no move clause this season, no trade clause this season, and then turns into a 15 team. This is a conversation for next year, to be honest, with Alex Wennberg, if the Sharks want to try to trade him. I do not see it happening. Barclay Goodrow, who the Sharks, of course, acquired in the offseason, has 3 years left, or 2 years after this one, 3 years including this season, at $3.641667 with a 15-team no-trade list. If the Rangers couldn't trade him this offseason, which is why he got put on waivers, what makes you think Mike Grier is going to be able to trade him now? Yeah, the contract is a little bit better now because it's now 2 seasons instead of 3 full seasons. And the Sharks don't have any retention slots left. That one's a hard one for me to see getting traded, especially you're probably going to either find a team that's plenty of cap space who would want Barclay Goodrow, or two, find a retention. And I just don't think the juice is worth the squeeze for that. I think there's other ways, which we'll probably discuss at some point on moving on from Barclay Goodrow, but I just don't see that one happening. The next one, though, Luke Kunin at $2.75 million. And I think this is your best forward trade asset that you have left. Kunin, who has been kind of tied to the Maple Leafs as a potential fit there, is a guy who can, forecheck, play hard, like he plays a heavy game. He adds some scoring, some secondary scoring. He's got 11 goals this season for the Sharks. He's had multiple 10-goal seasons in his career. Basically, he's been other than last year where he only scored 5 goals in 31 games because he missed because of injury. But he's a double-digit scorer. Like, you're getting double-digit scoring with Luke Kunin. 2.75 UFA. This, I think, is your best possibility to get something, because teams covet guys who can kind of come in, they play a role, play on the fourth line. We know Kunin can play on the penalty kill. He probably shouldn't be on your power play, but he's on the Sharks' second unit power play. I think this is your best piece among your forward group to try to get something. What you get, that's another story. I think for a guy like Kunin, you're most likely looking at like a mid-round pick, maybe like a fourth-round pick. If you're lucky, maybe you send a late-round pick to kind of juice it up to a third-round pick, but it's most likely you're getting something like a fourth-round pick for Luke Kunin. Or you're maybe getting like a B-level prospect, a guy who maybe plays NHL game. He's probably maybe not one of those type of guys, right? I think that's kind of what you're potentially getting from Luke Kunin. So I think Luke Kunin does get traded because I think somebody will want his services. But again, like with the forwards, the Sharks have moved so many forwards out over the past couple seasons, right? Mikael Granlund this year, you look at Tomas Hertl last year, who surprised us all. Of course, Timo Meier a couple seasons ago. Like, they've moved all their big pieces, and all the new guys are kind of going to be your future, right? And like this is why you've been tanking to get space and opportunities and players like Celebrini and Smith and et cetera. And you just start to run out of bodies here at some point. So I think Kunin is I think he's your guy who probably gets you the most among the forwards. Nico Sturm, Klim Kostin and Nico Sturm are both at $2 million. Klim, I would be surprised. One, he hasn't really played much this year, and two, he hasn't really done much when he's played this year. So I'd be surprised if he gets moved. Nico Sturm, I do think 100% gets traded, but with 2 years or $2 million on his deal, is very affordable if someone wants to upgrade the fourth line center. That's exactly what Nico Sturm's role is, right? He's good on the penalty kill. He's great on faceoffs. Like, exactly what you're getting. Think the Andrew Cogliano deal where they got a fifth-round pick from Colorado. That's probably what you're getting from a guy like Nico Sturm, is probably a fifth-round pick. So, and maybe you do something else with that. So, but again, you're not really expecting much from there. Carl Grundstrom, who the Sharks traded for this offseason, then proceed to give a 2-year deal at $1.8 million. Again, he hasn't really done too much. I know he's also fought some injuries here and there. I would be surprised if he got traded. Zetterlund, I know the Sharks and Zetterlund, I think, are looking to, put together a long-term deal. So I don't expect, I would be shocked if Zetterlund gets traded, but if someone offers you the moon for Fabian Zetterlund, then you probably have to talk about it. If Zetterlund's on the table, he's the guy who gets you the most out of the forward groups, but I just don't see Zetterlund. I think he's a really good fit for Mike Grier and what he wants, the vision of this team. I think Zetterlund's a Mike Grier type of guy. Dellandrea, just like Carl Grundstrom, the Sharks went out of their way to trade for this offseason and then give a 2-year contract at $1.3 million. I don't see him, and especially if you trade if you trade Nico Sturm, I think Dellandrea probably just becomes your fourth line center. And especially if you trade Sturm and Kunin, you need somebody who can play fourth line center, and I think that's where Ty Dellinger comes in. Celebrini Smith not getting traded, of course. Nikolai Kovalenko, again, I doubt. Again, he's been IR. He's a rookie. He's an RFA after this season. He's not getting traded either. Eklund's not getting traded, and the Walker Dewar. I mean, the Sharks got him for free off waivers. If again, kind of in that same if you couldn't trade Barclay Goodrow during the summer, if the Flames couldn't trade Walker Dewar during the season, why would the Sharks be able to get some for him now? I don't think there's not much meat left on the bones when it comes to Sharks forwards who have any sort of value, at least in the trade market. So we'll look at the defense and the goalies and see if there's anything left there. And then we'll talk about some of the kind of aging prospects and guys who might be on the way out, especially if Mike Grier tries to kind of cook up something bigger. So we'll get to that here in just 1 second. Looking to optimize your nutrition this year, Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences each week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. Plus, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfasts, and grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. Great thing about Factor is it cuts out the meal planning, right? That's the worst part of my week, sitting there trying to figure out what we are going to eat for the rest of the week. The convenience is unbeatable. No prep, no mess, just great food in minutes. And if you eat smart with Factor, get started at factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL 50 off and use code LockedOnNHL50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's Locked On NHL 50 off 50 off at factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. All right, before we continue, look at the defense and the goalies, see if there's anything there to trade. Of course, we're going to talk about Mario Ferraro here in just a second. Do want to thank you guys for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. When you guys are done with this episode, go check out one of the other great shows here at the Locked On Network. Of course, you have Locked On Fantasy Hockey. If your fantasy team needs some help, they got you covered there. Or check out one of the other shows here in the Bay Area. Locked On Niners, Locked On Warriors. We're in the Jimmy Butler season. Locked On Giants, Locked On A's. Plenty of great stuff here at the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. Okay, defense and goalies will do the same thing. We'll start with the defense going by AAV. Marc-Edouard Vlasic, 2 years left on his deal. 3-team, no trade list. Nobody's traded for Marc-Edouard Vlasic and his he's just going to ride out the rest of that contract. If the Sharks wanted to move it, they would have to attach a very high valuable pick for someone to eat that contract. And the Sharks kind of actually need that contract right now to just scrape the cap floor. So that Vlasic's just going to be here. So, which is fine. So good for him. Get that money. Jake Wallman, who the Sharks acquired this offseason from the Detroit Red Wings when Steve Yzerman forgot to call literally anybody else. Wallman, 2 years left, this year and next year at $3.4 million. And I've seen his name floated around with trade rumors, and it doesn't make sense to me, right? Wallman has been your best defenseman. I know he's 28. He'll be 29 next season. I would actually be more interested in signing Wallman to another contract potentially than I would be trading Jake Wallman, because I think, one, Jake Wallman is really good. And two, you're gonna need good defensemen. Jake Wallman is a good defenseman. I know hasn't been the same guy kind of since Christmas and since his injury, but I'm gonna go with the bigger sample size of what we've seen from Jake Wallman compared to the injury sample size, smaller sample size from Jake Wallman. And I'm not signing Jake Wallman to an 8-year extension, but I would be very happy if the Sharks did try to sign him to a 3-year type of extension after this contract is over. I think Wallman's good for the Sharks. I think you need players because if you trade him, you don't really have anybody else on the roster right now to do what Jake Walman does. And we saw last year what happens when you have defensemen who can't get the puck out of their zone. Walman's excellent at that, and they need more of those guys. So you would have to blow me away with a deal to get Walman traded, where the Sharks are getting the best player in the deal type of thing. Like this has to be like a massive deal. But it'd be really hard for me to trade Jake Walman right now. So Mario Ferraro, though, 2 years, including this one, at $3.25 million. He has been 1,000% available if the team is willing to pay the price for him. And Mike Grier isn't going to trade Mario Ferraro just to anybody because he can. You have to kind of wow him. And I think I do. I don't like. I see a path for the Sharks trading trading Mario Ferraro this season. And again, you have to either be getting like an A prospect back, like a guy who's ready to kind of make and be a full-time NHL player. Not saying like a guy like Simon Nemec or something like that. Not like one of those like top end, but a guy who's, like spent a couple years in the AHL, ready to make an impact and be a good NHL player. I could see a team, whether it's Toronto or somebody like that, where they're trying to win a Stanley Cup right now and they need a guy like Mario Ferraro to come in, especially a guy who's cost controlled for this year and next year. I could see a team like that would make sense. I think in this situation, I would rather have prospect / player instead of the pick, especially with this year's draft. If the Sharks did want to get another pick, whether it's a second round pick or something like that, in this year's draft, that's fine. But I like I've said before, I think the Sharks are going to be very aggressive in trying to do stuff this offseason to start to add real legitimate pieces to the roster. But if you want to move off from Mario Ferraro, I think this is where it's not the strongest trade deadline group, right? You have we've already seen a lot of pieces. Maybe a team gets a little bit desperate and overpays for Ferraro, and I think that's where you kind of strike right there. So if you're Mike Grier, so he's probably your best asset in the blue line. Actually, he's not probably. He is your best realistic asset on the blue line if you're gonna get something back, because you're probably getting like a second round pick, maybe a first round pick if you get a bidding war for Mario Ferraro, because teams value what Mario Ferraro brings, right? He's going to play on the penalty kill. He's going to try hard, etc. I think we've talked about it a million times with Ferraro, where he's been asked to do way too much for the Sharks and play way too high of a role. But if Mario Ferraro is like your fourth or fifth defenseman, you're probably feeling really good about your defensive group. So Timothy Liljegren, who the Sharks traded for this season from the Leafs, gave up a third round pick for him. This year, next year at $3 million, I don't see him getting flipped. Again, unless you kind of get what you're getting back for him. And the Sharks just have no right-handed defenseman. So I expect him to kind of be around right now. Jan Ruda is on IR. Last year of his deal at 2.75. He is expected to be back here. If he gets traded, it's probably going to be I would assume kind of the Nico Sturm type of thing, where you're probably getting like a late round pick, or maybe you're getting like a B level prospect or an AHL type of guy who can kind of come in and help there. Like you're not getting a ton of value, like massive value for Jan Ruda. So I can see him getting traded. If he doesn't get traded, it's not the end of the world type of thing. Henry Thrun, he's got this year, next year at $1 million on his contract. I don't see him getting traded. And then Shakir Mukhamadullin, who I know a lot of Sharks fans tend to throw into trades. Again, I don't see him getting traded. He's in the last year of his ELC and will be an RFA this offseason. So cost controlled. I get, if Mukhamadullin is getting traded, it's part of a much, much bigger deal type of thing. So As for the goalies on the roster, Vitek Vanecek in the last year of his deal at 3.4 and Alexandar Georgiev at 2.924 million. At this rate, I'd be honestly surprised if you got anything for them, just because you and I have watched Sharks games. Right. We know the best goaltender on the Sharks is currently in the Barracuda right now. And yeah, I don't, especially with those price points, unless a team has to be super desperate to get something to trade for one of those guys. I think those guys will both be free agents and I think those guys will be signing for contracts well below what they're playing right now. So that would be my guess for both those guys. So I don't foresee the Sharks trading them unless a team is extremely desperate to try to find some sort of short-term answer at goaltending while they wait for their starters to get healthy for the playoffs or something like that. So but yeah, so that's the Sharks roster. We're gonna look at the kind of prospects, which guys might be on the way out, especially if the Sharks do try to get something back, because I do kind of think the Sharks should be sneaky buyers this trade deadline. So we'll look at some of those guys here in just 1 second. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to keep you feeling fuller longer. I like the ones with the shells, a little bit of salt on there, because I don't know, I kind of like having to work for them. It's part of the joy of eating pistachios, cracking open the shells, just hearing that lovely crack sound every time you do it. And then I build a little wall with my shells, and my wife gets really mad every time I do it. So great snack, and I get to kind of tweak my wife. What more could you want? So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, before we finish up, of course, I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Now's the perfect time. If you haven't, hit the subscribe button. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the little like button. Pray to the almighty algorithm gods, like we do, and try to get the show out there to more and more people. So, or if you're listening on whatever podcast you like, make sure you hit subscribe. If you're on Apple, great time to leave a review. So thanks again for making Locked On Sharks your first listen, where we cover your team every day. All right, finally, the aging prospects, as we like to call them. So these are guys I think you have to look at, like guys in that 2020 draft. Guys who are probably, like, the Sharks are gonna have to start making some decisions on some of these guys, and especially on guys who you're starting to run out of waiver eligible seasons. And kind of the guys that make the most, like, in that group are, and we'll go alphabetical order here, is Thomas Bordeleau, right? He has 1 more season of waivers exempt, or he has to play like 120 games, which is not going to happen at NHL games. You look at Brandon Coe, 1 more year of waivers exempt, has not made the NHL yet. At this point, we kind of know what Brandon Coe is. You look at guys like Daniel Gushchin, who's played 16 games in the NHL, has 1 more season of being waiver exempt. You look at Tristan Robbins. He's played 3 NHL games. This is his last season of being waivers exempt. Guys like that, who, we've been kind of like, those guys came in, really kind of helped start building the Sharks prospect pool, but you're going to have to start making decisions on all these types of players, who majority of them, if not all those guys I just mentioned, are going to be RFAs at the end of the season. And Brandon Coe has arbitration, and same thing with Thomas Bordeleau. Both those guys have arbitration. And you're not going to be able to just, pass those guys through. Some of these guys, you're not going to be able to just kind of pass through waivers anymore and send them back down. I don't think you should trade them all, and I don't think you should trade them, but you wonder if some of these guys maybe do get moved this off season for teams that are looking to try to add some pieces to their kind of prospect pool or to their AHL teams. If the Sharks are especially trying to gather some assets or make a bigger move, or I wouldn't be surprised if one or a couple of these guys potentially get moved, and it could just be like what we saw Scott Reedy for Jacob Peterson a couple seasons ago, right? Here, let's just swap some prospects. This guy's not really working out in our system. This guy's not really working out in your system. Let's kind of give them a fresh start rest of the season, see how they do. And then, we're their RFAs, we can control the rights, so we can have them back here next season. Don't be surprised if one or two of these guys potentially get swapped out and something like that. And especially this Barracuda team, which is, right in the middle of a very heated playoff race. They're going to try to, we know the goal is not only to make the playoffs, but do something in the playoffs and give these young guys playoff experience, meaningful playoff experience. So don't be surprised if the Sharks and the Barracuda, if Mike Grier and Joe Will go out of their way to try to strengthen up and make this Barracuda team ready to do some damage in the playoffs, and especially if Askarov is expected to be back for the remainder of the season, unless Georgiev or Vanecek get hurt or traded. Askarov's probably gonna be the rest of the season to try to go through a playoff run and get this team ready for playoffs, and then be the guy in the playoffs. So I know they've been not the best kind of Barracuda team, kind of since Christmas-ish. But I still believe in this team. I still think he has a lot of talent, and I wouldn't be surprised if Grier and Joe Will try to do something to help this team, this Barracuda team, get over the hump and make some waves here in the Pacific Division. So overall, to be honest, I think it's going to be kind of a quiet-ish deadline, at least for when it comes to trading pieces out for the San Jose Sharks, because you're running out of bodies, right? So Luke Kunin, Nico Sturm, those guys should be traded. Nico Sturm, I think, is 100% gone, because a team will value what Nico Sturm does, especially if the cost is going to be a 4th or 5th round pick, right? Luke Kunin, I think, will get you probably the best asset among the forward group. And then Mario Ferraro is going to be a big decision what the Sharks do with him, and if a team is willing to kind of meet the Sharks' price. They don't have to move him, but if you get blown away by a deal, and if a team gets really desperate, you could definitely see Mario Ferraro playing for another team. I don't think the goalies are going anywhere, because you and I have eyes and have watched the goalies play hockey. And like I said, don't be surprised if maybe one of these aging prospects gets traded here at the deadline, as the Sharks try to bolster up and get this Barracuda team ready to make a deep, deep run. So that's going to be it for me today. We'll be back tomorrow. Really fun episode coming up tomorrow. I won't spoil it, but we got a really fun episode with some friends coming up. So make sure you guys are following wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at My Fry Hole. Until tomorrow, bye, friends.